Another good day, my wonderful learners. It's time to proceed further in the discussion about the Yoruba issues when it comes to civil war in the Yoruba civil wars of 19th century. Wabara Good News is still a great teacher. Welcome on board. Today, we're going to be looking at specific wars, like we mentioned in the last class, about the Yoruba civil war in the 19th century. This is part 2 of the civil wars in Yoruba land. We're going to be looking at specific wars and how they were caused by political, social, and economic factors. Still talking about the Great Kingdom, the Yoruba Great Kingdom, the Omo Oduduwas, the Yoruba Great Kingdom. The wars were fought. Remember, the last time we mentioned how a coalition of ethnic groups fought against another coalition or one coalition. We mentioned the Dahomey War. We mentioned how they engaged in war with Dahomey and how slaves were used in exchange for weapons to prosecute the war effort. So today, what objective are we to share? At the end of the lesson, the students should be able to see and recount the political, economic, and social factors that led to some specific wars in Yoruba land. So they will be able to look at these factors concerning looking at political, social, and economic factors. So these are the factors. Let's start with the Owu Wars, 1817 to 1824. These wars began when Owu attacked Akpomo during a struggle for control of the market town. What began as economic war suddenly turned into a political one when Ife challenged Owu for attacking an Ife territory. That was Akpomo. Ijebu also came to support Ife because she knew that it was against the tradition for a Yoruba king to attack the Ife territory. The ancestral town, the descendant town. No, it can never be. And because Ife invited her for assistance as well, they have to honor that to fight. In the meantime, Oyo warriors arrived who had fled southward. Remember the love adventure? Yes. They joined the Ife and Ijebu forces, launched attack, and laid siege to Owu before destroying the town completely. Continuing with their search for new land, the warriors attacked neighboring Egbatans. And what was their problem? They had accused the leaders of these places of giving support to the war effort of the vanquished Owu. They equally ended up by establishing a camp near Ibadan. Please note that significant. Look at destruction, the wreck on the Owu land. Now let's look at the Ijaye Wars, 1860 to 1865. During the waves of unrest, some military camps had grown up. Of course, you saw the one that was established in Ibadan. Two of them were one Ijaye, one Atiba. Ijaye was under his leader Kurumi, who has established a military absolutism near Ijaye. The Iba also assembled at Obiakuta from where they plan to control Ibadan for political and economic reasons. The Ijaye also had an eye on Upper Ogun against the wishes of their Alafin of Ogun. So the Alafin began to give secret support to the ambitions of Ibadan, the king rival of Ijaye. Now look at the great Kurumi depicted here significantly. Remember we mentioned that Kurumi was the leader of the Ijaye kingdom. The war was, however, precipitated by the death of Atiba and the failure of his son, which was a tradition for his son to die and be buried with the father as custom demanded. He refused. So because of this, Kurumi refused to recognize Alafin Adelu. The Iba and the Ijebu supported him, but the Ibadan supported Alafin. Then war broke out and Ijaye were defeated and totally destroyed. That was the end of Ijaye. The war front then moved from there to Remo, where the Ibadan wished to compare the town to open up trade route. Remember we mentioned the last time the issue of trade route, so that Ibadan could have access to trade at the coasts. Then, after the Ijaye War, Ibadan's power grown so big, they've become influential, and they have further expansionist ambition. So in the process, she found herself at war with Ijesha, who were in themselves interested in incorporating Igbajo in their empire. So you see, a lot of incorporation and acquisition. Ibadan was also in conflict with the Egba and the Ijebu, but in the meantime, the Ekiti, Ijesha, Akoko, and Igbomina, they are beginning to find the rule of Ibadan very oppressive. They are no longer comfortable with that, as Ibadan levy taxes and the Ibadan officials become too powerful, too domineering, and were doing whatever they like in the outstations of the empire. So in 1878, the Ekiti, Ijesha, Akoko, and Igbomina constituted themselves into the Ekiti Korapo Confederation, and with this, they revolted against Ibadan. So Ibadan now had to fight on many fronts, so they were caged in. Ibadan's problem were further compounded, increased when in 1882 the Ife joined the opposing confederation. So Ibadan was having it hot, seriously, at that time. So still on the Kiriji War, the war had taken on many dimensions. It was a fight of supremacy for Ibadan, a war of liberation by the Kiti Barako Confederation, a war of contain Ibadan ambition by the Ijebu and the Igba, a war to stop the Igba and the Ijebu from banning the passage of ammunition through their country to Ibadan, and a continuation of the effort of the Igba to prevent the Ibadan from importing arms through Ibadan and Porto-Novo. We mentioned that in the last discussion. Then the Ilorin took advantage of Ibadan's difficulty to join in the alliance against Ibadan. Ibadan is having it hard. Thus, why did Ijebu join the Igba in the war against Ibadan to resist what was described as Ibadan's warlike propensity and acquisitive proclivity? The Ijesha and Ekiti saw the war as a means of ending the oppressive rule of Ibadan totally. They don't want it again. The causes of the war were mixed and involved many factors. When the British decided to intervene, they complained about the closure of trade routes to Ibadan. Would that work? But it was clear that this was only one dimension to the wars, and an adequate representation of the fundamental issues involved in it. Thus, when Glover, the British Governor General of Lagos, accused the Igba closure of roads to Ibadan, he failed to appreciate that the Igba were not prepared to keep trade routes open, if that would mean that Ibadan will continue to supply arms. For the Igba, the military threat for Ibadan was more serious than the loss of trade. So trade could go. They don't even want to, if Ibadan will, they open road, they bring weapons to kill them, so they don't want that anymore. So they want it to close totally. Now, what were the impact of the wars? There were consequences, social consequences, political consequences, and the rest. So as with all wars, there was much disruption in family life. Husbands were declared missing and wives were turned into widows. Yes, during war, women turned to war booties as they were taken captive by their captors, who turned them to their own wives. There was destruction of property as entire villages were razed down and farm lives were totally destroyed. And apart from all the loss of life and damage to property, the wars created a spirit of mistrust. Nobody could trust each other. Like we said, when things fall apart, the center can no longer. Look at the whole village razed to the ground because of people ran for their life, and those that died. Social consequences yet. Another important consequence of the war was the emergence of new communities, which cut across some ethnic loyalty. Such was the settlement at Ibadan, which was a mixture of many groups of people from all over Yoruba land. Yes. Mixed multitude. They came from different ethnic groups, but we all shared a common determination to live. That was their goal. What are the political consequences? One result of the war was the loss of personal freedom. It was no longer enough to depend on close relatives or age group. One needed access to a powerful war chief to provide defense and safety. So in the process, one forfeited personal freedom and choice and depended on this warlord, this Arel and Akakan force for directive about where to stay, who was to rule, and who was to take decisions. So they have to abdicate their right to franchise themselves so as to be puppets or loyal to this. The war chiefs or professional warriors acquired immense power and prestige, and it was a great benefit to be associated with them. So people saw it as an honor to associate with them or their household members. Many of them took over the status of the traditional rulers and could not be challenged. Many of them established military dictatorship, like the one that happened at Ijaya. Now, some assembled to establish a republic and system administration. Only then, at Ibadan. Names such as Ajayi, Latosisha, Agumala, Onafowokan, Ogedengbe, Oluyole, Shodeke, and Ibikunle emerged from the battlefield. They dominated the political life at that time. So if you are not identified with this, you are nothing. Now, another result of the wars was the development of new settlements and communities. Among these were the Modakeke, which was near Ife. Remember the Ife Modakeke war between the late 90s down to 2000? Then if you pass Osun State, you see a whole village raised to the ground. The Ife Modakeke, the Modakekes were those people that mixed up with their inhabitants, the people that were accepted by the king, and they continued to grow. But at the time, they were told that they were not from this land. But no, they have already settled. They have to fight for what belongs to them. Abeokuta, which used the Olumo Rock as a national defense, was also one of them. Oyo, Ayede, and Shagamu. New system of relationship and new political experiments were begun in this new settlement. Although it is often said that wars never settle issues, but it seems clear that the Yoruba was this settle a number of issues. What are they? First, the Kiti used their confederation and the wars fought through the institution to liberate themselves from the imperialism of Ibadan. So the high-handedness of Ibadan, they used it to free themselves from them and to ensure that such imperialism was not permitted in the future. Yes, they achieved that as well. Secondly, the Egba and the Jebu were compelled to open up their roads to Ibadan. Also, Ilorin, the traditional enemy of the Yoruba, fell to humiliate Ibadan as the Fulani were beaten back at Osogbo in 1840. Remember, note the Fulanis were beaten back at Osogbo in 1840. What are the economic consequences? The wars brought considerable wealth to the Europeans who supplied guns during the period in exchange of slaves. Remember? It also brought prosperity to families who acted as middlemen because as trade routes were closed, they had to make it from the coast and give to those in the interiors. There was much agricultural work and an increase in food production. This was because prisoners of war were turned over to farm hands. Working farm, many of the prisoners were bought by men who planned extensive cultivation projects and how to work in their farm. It was reported that during the period, an Ibadan woman owned more than 200 slaves, all of whom worked on her farms. Trade passed into new hands, and many of the farmers, traders, lost their livelihood. Trade activities continued and were even intensified with increased demand for European and African products. So it wasn't just agricultural products. European products and other things made trade to change pattern as well. So we can see that the war effort was so diverse. In the first class, we mentioned some of these areas like the Ijebu, mentioned the Ota, remember the Homi that defeated Ota, Abeokuta, and Ketu. We have mentioned the Kiriji, we have mentioned the Jaye, we have mentioned the Owo War. So the Yoruba War was intense and significant in historical slide. And we want to continue to remember these things because if one does not know where rain start beating him, he will not know where he start cleaning his body. Because the past need to wake in the present so that the future will not be born deformed. So history is quite significant for us to know our past so as to make the future very much orderly so we can propagate or navigate well in the future. Like I said, the history in the past is very important so that we can make the present very properly coordinated so that we can navigate the future accordingly. It's been a wonderful time with you. Thank you very much. Keep on reading your books. Keep on preparing, doing your CBTs, and keep on doing better. I want to see you come out in flying colors I want to see you come out all these trials unscathed and very much uplifted. Thank you very much. I remain Mr. Wabara. Good news.